Jack, I can't believe you didn't say the stat. That's the most by any player in any 4-game span since at least 1950. Jack, it's his first 4 games ever. His first 4 games.
You're tuned in to the Ross Tucker Football Podcast, guiding your gridiron journey, none other than your host, former NFL lineman, Ross Tucker.
Oh, yeah, it is. But it's not just any Ross Tucker Football Podcast. It is a Monster Monday presented, of course, by DraftKings, as always, that we are actually recording late Sunday night after the Sunday night football game, but before my red-eye flight from Las Vegas to Miami, because on Monday night, I've got the Dolphins and the Titans for Westwood One, so I'm flying from the TV game to the radio game. It is a new week, which means we'll have new winners at the end of the week, which I love. All you have to do is engage with @RossTuckerPod on any of the social platforms or @RossTuckerNFL on TikTok. You get a great chance to win a little something from your boy, a.k.a. me. I love sending you guys signed whatever in the mail because I know that if you listen, you probably want it. It's cool, whatever. Sponsor confirmation email winners, always cool as well. Remember, futurefans.com. You just use that code ROSS or westshorehome.com/Ross. Giving out a Madden at the end of the week for someone that sends me a confirmation that they got a box from futurefans.com to help their children learn the game of football, or even if they just got an estimate from westshorehome.com/Ross. YouTube shout out, youtube.com/Ross Tucker NFL. Just make a comment there. I love sending you those videos. Shout out to Tyler Wing, Ryan Johnson, Billy Govey, 3 of our latest patrons. Patreon.com/RT Media. Big show time.
The Big Show.
All right, Ross, what were your overall themes from week 4 across the NFL so far?
I got a few. I think the first one is just probably injury central, man, already. Now, it started actually after the Thursday night game where you found out that for the Cowboys, Micah Parsons, DeMarcus Lawrence, they're going to miss some time. But think about some of these games today, right? Like the Eagles not having perhaps their 3 best offensive players, maybe their 3 best offensive players not named Saquon Barkley at this point, with both receivers, Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown out, Lane Johnson at right tackle out. You know, how about the game I did, Jack? I mean, the Raiders were without their best offensive and defensive players. No Devontae Adams on offense, no Max Crosby on defense. The Browns were down 3 starting offensive linemen. They lost another offensive lineman during the game. Njoku didn't play either. I mean, it just that's one of the things that jumped out to me was just all of the injuries and how it's stacked for certain teams. And really, I mean, that, you know, you lose one guy, but to lose several like that, it just it stands out. The other thing that stands out, how about all the muffed punts, Jack? Well, I mean, what was the deal with that? Why? No idea. It's funny because I was talking with Ray Bubba Ventrone, the Browns special teams coordinator, before the game, and I said, you know, there's been 4 muffed punts already? He said, 4? I saw a couple. I said, yep, and I went through all of them with him because that just doesn't happen that often where there's that many muffed punts. So that jumped out to me for sure. And then one of the themes was teams getting out to big leads and then sort of holding on after that. I mean, I guess the Ravens, I thought there was a chance. Buffalo had all the momentum until that trick play where Josh Allen fumbled. The Eagles actually had the momentum and looked like they might be able to come back and make it competitive against the Bucs until Jalen Hurts fumbled. So interestingly, both those teams that were down big were starting to make comebacks, and then their quarterbacks got strip sacked. And then the Colts up big on the Steelers, had to hold on. The Vikings up big on the Packers, had to hold on. And I don't even know if this is a theme, but Jaden Daniels is the real deal. Extremely, extremely impressive.
All right, we can get right into the games, Ross. After an amazing start, New Orleans, they lose their second straight, falling to the Falcons 26-24.
Really, really strange game. Because you think about it, I don't think the Falcons scored an offensive touchdown the whole game. They got the touchdown after the muffed punt in the end zone. I have one of the muffed punts I was mentioning, no idea why Shaheed would try to field a ball within his own 5-yard line. I mean, that just does not make sense. And then Troy Anderson, who was everywhere. He could have actually won the 11 Oaks hungriest performance. 16 tackles before he hurt his knee and a pick six for Troy Anderson. The linebacker for the Falcons was incredible. Saints just kind of made too many mistakes, although they still had the lead late. And yet the Falcons, they found a way to get down there. Younghoe Koo drills the long field goal for the Falcons to get a gigantic win that they had to have.
Speaking of gigantic wins, Cincinnati, they finally get their first win of the season. They beat the Panthers on the road 34-24.
Right. Obviously couldn't go 0-4. Even 1-3 is still going to be tough to come back from. What's been consistent for the Bengals since week 2, the issue was really week 1, but since week 2, what's been consistent for them is their offense. I mean, Burrow is very much in a rhythm right now. He had terrific numbers again. And what's cool for the Bengals? They ran the ball pretty effectively. I always call these like the takeaways, right, for moving forward. Well, if the Bengals can continue to run the ball that well, that would be huge. Although on the flip side, the Bengals are still really struggling defensively. I mean, Andy Dalton gives the Panthers life, gives them hope, gives them a chance to win these games. And the Bengals, again, for the most part, seemed pretty powerless to stop Andy Dalton and the Panthers. They were able to do it enough. And Trey Hendrickson leaving with the neck injury didn't really help either.
Amid some offensive controversy, the Bears, they beat the Rams 24-18.
What's the controversy?
I believe it was Jay Glazer reported during the 1 o'clock games that the Bears sort of held a come-to-Jesus meeting almost with their offensive coordinator, Waldron. I believe the name is losing me at the moment.
Yeah, no, you're right. Shane Waldron. And they talked to him about being more aggressive. I don't really know if he was. I mean, the success they had was a lot of it had to do with DeAndre Swift. I mean, DeAndre Swift, who everybody had been kind of ripping last week, he came out and played really well. 72 receiving yards on 7 catches. I mean, he had 165 total yards. He really shouldered the load. And the good thing for the Bears and for Caleb Williams is he's still growing, right? Young player, of course. They got a really good defense. I mean, their defense, I feel like, has shown up every week. Even if the Rams had more yards and all that stuff, the turnovers by the Rams, the mistakes from Stafford, that ended up being really the biggest difference in the game. And I'll also give a special shout out to the Bears punter, Torrey Taylor. I mean, that was big because you talk about all the yards the Rams had, but they were so often pinned back into their own 20 that it didn't really matter that much.
Sam Darnold's MVP cane, it's only getting stronger. They get a win over the Packers 31-29.
Oh, I saw that, Jack. I saw your at Ross Tucker pod post about is Sam Darnold a legitimate MVP candidate. He is right now. I mean, how can you argue any other way? Again, just unbelievable the way the Vikings were just tearing apart the Packers early in that game. Aaron Jones was a big part of it. Jefferson was able to get his touchdown. And I remember thinking early in the game, wow, the Packers should not have played Jordan Love. That was not smart. especially against Brian Flores and the way he likes to pressure, the way he likes to bring the heat. Just not a very smart move on their part. And, Malik Willis is playing well. Why not let Jordan Love make sure that thing is like 100%? Well, in fairness, and kudos to them, Jordan Love battled back. I mean, some of it you could say is garbage time or whatever, but not really. I mean, they were still in the game as Jordan Love started throwing the ball all over the place and got them all the way back. If he didn't throw that pick to Byron Murphy, Packers might have won the game. I mean, that's how much of a difference it was late in the game. Kudos, by the way, to Kevin O'Connell, won both of his challenges, whereas not the same for LaFleur.
Trevor Lawrence's winless streak, it extends now to 308 days after a loss to the Texans, 24-20.
And he's just not playing well. And he's not the only reason they didn't win the game or whatever, but he is very, very clearly not playing well. I mean, C.J. Stroud, it's interesting because this is almost another one where it's like the Texans came out, looked like they were taking care of business. Then it was all Jags for a while, and then the Texans, did it when they needed to. But for the Jags, it felt like it was more Tank Bigsby running the ball than it really was anything Trevor Lawrence did. The one big positive takeaway that you continue to have for the Jags is just their rookie Brian Thomas. He is a star already. For the Texans, one of my takeaways, they continue to have the penalties. Laramie Tunsil, they continue to have the penalties over and over again. But Nico Collins was an absolute beast and probably the biggest reason why the Texans were able to win that game.
Anthony Richardson exited early for the Colts, but Indy was still able to get the win with Joe Flacco, 27-24.
And my thought when I saw that injury to Anthony Richardson, and evidently it's a hip pointer, my thought was immediately, boy, and Flacco came in and threw a touchdown pass, Jack. So I was thinking they're not putting Richardson back in there. Like they're going to, they almost, this gives them an opportunity to see what Flacco can do. I thought Flacco was solid. I don't know that he tore it up like he did in Cleveland, but he did well enough for them to win. He played well enough for them to win the game. Certainly they had a big lead. I thought Fields and the Steelers offense showed me something getting back in this game, because I don't know that many of us thought that they really had that in them. So I thought they did a nice job getting back in the game later on in the game to at least give them a chance, even though they weren't able to ultimately get it done.
Interesting one. Bo Nix, he threw for just 60 yards, but the Broncos, they were still able to get the win 10-9.
Boy, this is a bad loss for the Jets. You can't lose at home to a Broncos team starting a rookie quarterback on the road in his fourth game in the weather like that. And both defenses did a good job, and I think the weather clearly was a huge factor, especially in the first half when they couldn't do anything. But, hey, Jets, score a touchdown. I mean, Aaron Rodgers, Garrett Wilson, Mike Williams, Lazard, Breece Hall, score a touchdown. The Broncos did to Cortland Sutton, and they even got some running from Javonte Williams in this game. The Jets just make a bunch of mistakes. Even the last play where Breece Hall doesn't pick up the right guy coming off the edge. Tough to win in the NFL when you're making some of the mistakes that the Jets are. And then obviously Zerline missing the field goal was devastating for the Jets because that could have been the difference.
Philadelphia struggled early and often in a very humid Tampa, Florida, losing to the Bucs 33-16.
Well, this is one of those games we talked about where the Bucs just came out and put it to the Eagles early. I mean, it was 14-0 before you even figured out what was going on. in large part because of Baker Mayfield. So I'm going to give him the 11 Oaks hungriest performance. You guys know I love food. I love meat. How about genuine Wagyu beef, Angus beef, heritage breed pork, and free-range chicken? It's all locally raised and available nationwide online at 11oaksfarms.com. My Central PA peeps, you can actually go and check it out in person. And by the way, when you're eating the meat, make sure you have some Labatt Blue Lights with you so you can elevate the entire experience, kind of like dinner with my wife Saturday night, having a beer or two while I'm having a delicious steak with friends and living life to the power of we. Always enjoy Labatt Blue Light responsibly. Beer, Labatt USA, Buffalo, New York. Baker Mayfield came out in this game and was absolutely on fire. It felt like the Bucs offensively were a step ahead of the Eagles really throughout that first half. I mean, Baker Mayfield was getting the ball out quick. Receivers were open, pinpoint accuracy, and the Eagles really didn't have much of an answer for Baker Mayfield, who played one of the best games I've ever seen him play. And he's got the receivers to do it. Godwin and Evans were both fantastic. Meanwhile, for the Eagles, Saquon Barkley did his part, but not a lot of other guys did. Felt like it was a step back for the offensive line. Defensive line not able to get very much pressure. Just a bad day at the office for the Birds in this one. Huge win for the Bucs after that disappointing loss last week to the Broncos at home.
Jayden Daniels is literally and physically running away with Offensive Rookie of the Year. They beat down on the Cardinals 42-14.
That really surprised me, actually, Jack. I was not expecting, I don't know about you, but I was not expecting what we saw in that game. The Cardinals came out and played the Bills really tough in week 1, the game I called on CBS. And then week 2, they got the win where, that week 2 game where they got the win, they put up a ton of points. And even last week against the Lions, they were right there. But wow. After that, hard to believe what happened in that game. I thought that the Cardinals had a good chance to win the game. I thought it was like an even game. Now, on the Even Money Betting podcast, I took the Commanders getting the 3.5 points, but I thought it was an even game. Jayden Daniels, he's completing 82% of his passes through the first 4 games. Jack, I can't believe you didn't say this stat. That's the most by any player in any 4-game span since at least 1950. Jack, it's his first 4 games ever. His first 4 games. 26 of 30. They're running the ball very effectively as well because now people are really worried about the pass and because that Jayden Daniels can run it, and his running is an effective part of it as well. I think the bigger takeaway from this game is twofold. Second week in a row where the Cardinals' offense, not good. Second week in a row where they can't score more than 14 points, and Kyler Murray not looking like he did in week 2. And the other takeaway, I guess, is just Dan Quinn and the Commanders' defense. Now, that's the second week in a row. Well, I guess they didn't play that great against the Bengals on Monday night. But still, if the Commanders' defense, if Dan Quinn can get those guys to be decent, I'm telling you the Commanders are going to be a force to be reckoned with in the NFC. They already are. They're in first place.
San Francisco, they get it done at home, being the Patriots 30-13.
Not much of a surprise here. Certainly it helped Brock Purdy that they were able to get George Kittle back. They were able to get Deebo Samuel back. Those guys obviously make a big difference. Still no McCaffrey and probably won't be for a while. But they were, they did stall for a couple field goals early. The Patriots defense at least came to play. But the Patriots, these last two games, the Jets Thursday nighter and this game, the Patriots are kind of who we thought they would be, which is not a very good team. The question in my mind is when they'll go to Drake May, right? And they'll go to Drake May, I would guess sooner rather than later. We'll have to see when that happens, but sooner rather than later, they got to go to Drake May because at some point you got to let him learn. He's watched now. I don't know what, the more reps I feel like Drake May gets this year, the better off he'll be. And Fred Warner, of course, did what he always does. Unbelievable. Another pick six. He's not just the best linebacker in the league. He's one of the best linebackers we've seen in a while.
Kansas City, they get the win, but something you alluded to earlier, they likely lose Rashee Rice for the season with a torn ACL.
Brutal. That is absolutely brutal. Not good for the Chiefs. They already lost Hollywood Brown probably for the season. They've lost Pacheco for a while. And this is one of the things that happens, I think, to Super Bowl teams or teams that go that far, that many years in a row. But how about, Travis Kelce and Kareem Hunt? Is it like 2018? What is going on with the Chiefs offensively? But now they have Xavier Worthy. Somehow the rest of the NFL let them get Xavier Worthy. The Chargers were actually up 10-0. I thought Herbert looked good early. Their defense pretty much played pretty well throughout, but ultimately, not able to do it nearly well enough after that first quarter were the Chargers.
Game you might know a thing or two about. Vegas, they make a defensive stand late to beat the Cleveland Browns 20-16.
Ended up being a great game. People are like texting me and people back in the hotel, sorry you had to call that game. Like, what are you talking about? It was a one-score game. The Browns had the ball inside the 10-yard line at the end of the game. That's I love stuff like that. Absolutely love any close game. These teams are desperate for wins. Not every game can be two undefeated teams against each other. The other thing I liked about it is we got an awesome new sponsor, Jack. It's the Offensive Line of the Week, presented by Campbell's Chunky. Soup that eats like a meal, which I love. Campbell's Chunky soup eats like a meal. I'm giving it to the Raiders, and here's why. Number one, they started two rookies making the first starts of their lives. Jackson Powers Johnson at left guard, DJ Glaze at right tackle. And not only are they rookies making their first start, they're going against the Browns front, the ferocious Browns front. Guess what? They held up pretty well. And in fact, it was by far the best rushing game that the Raiders have had this year, over 150 yards. So I got to give it to the Raiders as my offensive line of the week. Smirnoff knows there's no I in football. Football is a we thing, an experience that is best enjoyed together with good drinks and good folks. Smirnoff's the world's #1 vodka and an official vodka partner of the NFL. And this year, Smirnoff is giving fans in select areas of the country a chance to win the ultimate game day experience, from tickets to sideline passes and much more. Just head to WeDoGameDays.com until November 15th to enter for your chance to win. Smirnoff, We Do Game Days. Please drink responsibly. Smirnoff number 21 vodka, distilled from grain, 40% alcohol by volume. The Smirnoff Company, New York, New York. Please do not share with anyone under legal drinking age. No purchase necessary. 21 plus. Ends 11/15/24. See rules at website for participating areas and other important details. Sponsored by Diageo Americas Incorporated, New York, New York. For the Browns, Jack, it's just so many critical errors. Just critical mistake after critical mistake. Amari Cooper bounced off his chest for a interception. Nick Harris gets a hold, which, when we saw the other angle, I can see why they called it a hold. Just not blocking the right guys at times. The Browns, I said this during the game, I'll say it again now for people who didn't watch the game, got to be tough to be a Browns fan. It's got to be very, very frustrating right now when you watch what's going on with that team. Jack, Deshaun Watson played well. Deshaun Watson played well And they still lost. Everybody's always talking Deshaun. Deshaun was fine. Deshaun wasn't the reason why they lost the game.
The Ravens, they get back to 500 with a 35-10 statement win over the Buffalo Bills.
It was a statement game. You're right. And what's crazy about it to me is there was some stat, because I did the first 3 Bills game, where they had been within 8 in like every game Josh Allen's ever played. Like, I don't know if you can find it, Jack. We don't have enough time, but like, there's some crazy stat that the Bills never get blown out, ever, 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 under McDermott or Josh Allen, which I think says a lot about those guys, right? They always have a good game plan, whatever. Well, that ended. They got blown out in this one. From the first play, Derrick Henry, 87 yards for the first play. The Bills defensively, that was a step back. Offensively, the Bills started to get it going, and then I mentioned earlier that fumble by Josh Allen really just took away any chance. But Allen was never able to get into the same type of rhythm that he looked like he was in the last couple of weeks. Impressive performance by the Ravens. We got the college draft on Monday as well. You got to check that show out. Emery is on fire talking about college football as well as his picks against the spread. Other than that, I think we're done here.
Thanks for tuning in to the Ross Tucker Football Podcast. Make sure to also check out Even Money, Fantasy Feast, and College Draft, all on the DraftKings Network, YouTube, or subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform.
Shout out myfrontpagestory.com. I love love. I love rewarding you guys. Get a story from myfrontpagestory.com for someone in your life for some special occasion. BackOfficeScheduler.com, HumanHeadNYC.com, Sporticulture, Pizza Boy Brewing.